Right, so it was earlier this week at Prime Minister's Questions that we were horrified to witness the tit-for-tat one-upmanship between brylcreemed borefest Keir Starmer and the Tory leadership equivalent of a kid on work experience, Kemi Badenoch, trying to out-racist each other over the matter of 200,000 Ukrainian refugees being more than welcome to the UK, but 6 Palestinians coming in via the same system being an abhorrence, an illegal loophole that clearly needed closing. All despite this one Palestinian family already having family here who had become British citizens. The scale of the racism both government and opposition displayed horrified everyone whose knuckles are not in regular contact with the floor. The only voters such narratives appeal to are those backing the politics of Nigel Farage. The only voters Starmer and Badenoch seem to care about winning over 3 far-right political parties, as we clearly have in this country these days. One in power, one in main opposition, and the way polls are going, the worst of the lot becoming more and more likely to form the next government as a result. Where is the opposition, the real opposition, to this overrepresented but equally unrepresentative racism? Well, one MP is having absolutely none of it, and has made a move that will really put Starmer's human rights record to the test, because he can either make up for his racist outbursts or double down on them. I put money on it being the latter. Right, so for those who didn't catch my video the other day going over the events of this week's Prime Minister's Questions, the sickening sight of both sides trying to be the bigger racist where it came once more to the issue of immigration shows how far both main parties have sunk. But equally all the more perverse is that because of the over-representation of Reform UK in our media, they, the worst of all when it comes to nonsense narratives like this on immigration, are reaping the benefits of Labour and Tory polling collapses. So as disgusted as we are by all of this, worse could be getting into power next as a result. The slide towards fascism as that is, driven by politicians trying to ape that in the hope they will win votes, but instead end up driving more and more people towards the real thing. Well, fortunately, Parliament isn't without hope, isn't without some individuals doing the right thing and making the right calls. And if it doesn't succeed, well, it will reflect all the worse on those who act against it. The MP in question here is Independent Alliance MP for Birmingham Perry Barr, Ayoub Khan, himself a lawyer, one infinitely more believing in human rights than Keir Starmer, clearly, it seems, as he's taken what happened on Wednesday at PMQs and decided some action's necessary. Independent MP Ayoub Khan has tabled a motion in Parliament urging the British government to urgently establish a visa scheme for Palestinians with family ties in Britain. The move comes after Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced on Wednesday that the government would seek to prevent Palestinian refugees from living in the UK using a refugee scheme established for Ukrainians. Recognising the humanitarian crisis continuing to be faced by many Palestinians, Khan's motion reads, "It is imperative that the UK underscores its commitment to humanitarian aid and support for those affected by conflict by facilitating their ability to reunite with families already residing in Britain." Starmer insisted in Parliament that the Home Office will shut a legal loophole that allowed a Palestinian refugee family from Gaza to stay in the UK. Now, for a pair of Zionist shills like Starmer and Badenoch, this is a bit of a nightmare, because although the actual motion is an easily agreed to one, common sense, isn't it? Common decency, it would put them at odds with Israel. And when Starmer particularly is so heavily backed by the Israel lobby, both financially and politically, and after his rancid performance pouring scorn all over the fact that 6 Palestinians were trying to settle here versus the praise heaped for 200,000 Ukrainian refugees being more than welcome here, the optics of him opposing this would be scandalous. And as a great many Labour MPs would doubtless be very uncomfortable given the fallout from that PMQs to tie themselves to Starmer's rancid racism over this motion. A Palestinian using the Ukraine visa scheme cannot be allowed to stand? Well, establish a Palestinian one for those with family here instead then. The Home Office, run by Little Miss Immigration Mugs, Yvette Cooper, has said this will open the floodgates to Palestinians with family coming here to settle in the UK. Well, hang on a minute. They're being genocided, are they not? Is there not an asylum case to be had here then? Up until recently, Palestinians didn't have a case for asylum here in the UK because the UK were funders, as many nations are around the world, of the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA. But your mates in Israel have decided to ban UNRWA, haven't they? Therefore, they can no longer operate in Gaza and the West Bank. So that clause, if you like, has now gone. Therefore, I would be very surprised if we didn't see more refugees from Palestine applying for asylum to come here. Perhaps you should have thought of that before you carried on selling Israel the means to turn more Palestinians into refugees. If you don't want them coming here, stop helping to make them. Well, in light of this claim by the Home Office, this family of 6 had their initial application to come here and join their family member, the father's brother, who has lived in the UK since 2007, refused. However, last September, they took their case to the Immigration Tribunal, who then ruled in their favour. Cue the abject racism over brown-skinned people being allowed to flee to the UK. Chris Philp, the shadow Home Secretary, showing the dearth of talent on the Tory benches, said the case showed changes to human rights law were needed so that Parliament, not judges, controlled who could settle in the UK. Well, I'm sorry, no, it doesn't work that way, Chris. Judges, the legal system, are the checks and balances on Parliament. You need to be checked and balanced too, especially when you display such abject racism as both your party and Labour clearly are. Only white people who are 45% blonde, like the 200,000 Ukrainians, are welcome. Is that what I take you to mean? Rupert Lowe, one of Reform UK Limited's millionaire MPs, has said the judge's decision at the Immigration Tribunal was deranged insanity and called for the sacking of immigration judges who are found to be actively working against the interests of the British people and in favour of their own political desires, also saying the system should work for Britain, not Gaza. Hypocrisy much? You mean work for your own racist proclivities? That's what you're getting at, isn't it? Ukraine is fine with reform again, but you cannot call yourself a humanitarian and cannot say you are doing your part if you are picking and choosing which refugees you choose to help. Skin colour and place of origin be damned. A refugee is a refugee. It is a human right to be able to come here and seek asylum. As signatories of the Refugee Convention, that is the case, that is the law. They can come here and it is not for politicians to play favourites with, depending on how loudly the Zionist lobby wails, or how much money buys your influence, or how racist you, when ultimately skin colour is the only difference between innocent Ukrainians being caught up in war and innocent Palestinians being caught up in war. But then even human rights, and that means ours here as well, British people in the UK, the same rights as any of those refugees or asylum seekers that might be under threat choosing to come here as these three parties become ever more right-wing and ever more racist, continue to threaten. Ayoub Khan summed it all up when he spoke to Middle East Eye on the matter, saying, Ayoub Khan MP told Middle East Eye that the government's move is disgraceful. I wholeheartedly refute the notion from the Home Office that such a scheme will open the floodgates, he said. Very few Palestinians will ever voluntarily leave their home due to the spiritual and sentimental attachment they have to the land. The vast majority would rather return to rubble and rebuild, even when the conditions outside are far superior to those inside. However, Khan added, for the minority that do need to leave, whether it's because of the need for urgent medical treatment or to be reunited with family in Britain, what's good for one group of persecuted people should be good for everyone. The same legal principles should apply whether these people are Ukrainian or Palestinian. In Britain, we have a proud history of being a country of sanctuary for those fleeing persecution. This is once again the Labour Party appeasing the far right under threat from reform. Ayoub Khan is of course right. Obviously he is right. It is just pure common sense and decency what he speaks of there. You only need to see the reaction of the Palestinian people to Donald Trump's suggestion they be relocated to realise these people do not want to leave. And many of those choosing to stay are doing so in the knowledge right now that they may well die as a result of their decision. But they would quite simply rather die as Palestinians in Palestine, in their own land, than go anywhere else if they can avoid it. We had Nigel Farage scapegoat before, several years ago, when Romania and Bulgaria were admitted as EU members, that Britain would be flooded by people from those countries. It simply didn't happen. It won't happen now either. It is just petty, small-minded racism on show here by petty, small-minded politicians. And nothing less than that is driving this thinking. And with Ayoub Khan's move now, Parliament will be dared to double down on Starmer and Badenoch and Reform UK's racism, or be better than that. Any MP not backing it because of their racism or choosing to put their careers first via the whip will never be forgiven for it. Meanwhile, if you didn't see the exchange between Starmer and Badenoch and have a stomach strong enough to think you'll stand it, you can see the clip as well as my shredding of the pair of them in this video recommendation here as your suggested next watch. Please do hit like, share and subscribe though before you do so, if you haven't already, so as to ensure you don't miss out on all new daily content and help support the channel at the same time, of course, which is very much appreciated. and I will hopefully catch you on the next bid, therefore. Cheers, folks.